Now we come to a deeply unfortunate situation that unfolded at the 84th annual meeting of the Society for American Archaeology. What you described as a bitter row in the Pipeline article covering this story, and one which I must confess I haven't gone out of my way to learn too much about. I know the broad strokes of this issue, but I'm more than happy to hand over to you to lay the groundwork here in terms of what we're talking about. Seems to be the most bizarre, certainly from a management standpoint, the most bizarre series of ironic but also tragic uh, decisions that could possibly be made in and around a conference. So over to you.
Right. Well, the important thing to remember is that the Society of American Archaeology is a highly respected organisation. It's been around for a long time, and its annual meeting, which this year was at Albuquerque, New Mexico, is one of the red letter days in the academic calendar. It attracts delegates from all over the world to talk about current work and current issues in archaeology. It's a major conference. So that's the basis. What happened this year was the result of a disciplinary process that took place at the University of Alaska Anchorage, where an Alaska-based TV station called KTVA got hold of a report into what's called a Title IX disciplinary procedure that had been carried out against one of their academic staff, an archaeologist called Dr. David Yesner.
Right.
Dr. Yesner was accused of sexual harassment and bullying and sexual assault by 9 women. And a report by a lawyer to the university under this official procedure, this official disciplinary procedure, found that, well, I'll quote from it because I think it's important to be clear about this and try and avoid speculation. So what the lawyer writing for the Pontius Law Offices, who were commissioned to write the report, wrote is as follows. As a result, what should have been a safe environment for the female staff and students became a place where they had to protect themselves from discrimination and potential harassment and/or assault. Seemingly benign situations with their professor, advisor, or colleague produced anxiety and discomfort. This environment hindered their ability to learn and thrive in what should have been a supportive educational environment. Yesner was made aware that his conduct was offensive by at least 2 of his students, and yet it appears that he failed to modify his behaviour or address it in any meaningful way. And in fact, in the case of one of the complainants, it said that the more serious allegation that Yesner sexually violated C9 while in Delta Junction while working at a university-sponsored archaeological dig amounts to sexual assault. That's how serious it was.
Right, and also given that this is a statement produced by a lawyer, you don't say a sexual assault unless you're sure
you can stand it
happened.
up. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. This is a report written to a legal standard as part of an official disciplinary procedure.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, as a result of that, the university took action, and 3 days, I think it was, before the SAA conference, the university chief of police at University of Alaska circulated an email banning Yesner from the campus and any activities associated with the university, and circulated his photograph, basically making it a public safety issue.
Right.
Now,
so just to be clear then, so he was not allowed back onto the campus where he had been working for the past several years. Yes.
He had taken retirement in the meantime, which is again often happens in similar cases. But now he was banned from any further association with the university. Yes.
Right. Okay.
So what happened then is that on the 10th of April, the registration opened for the SAA conference. This is 2 days after he'd been banned from the university, and Yesner was able to register for the conference and was spotted entering the conference premises at Albuquerque by survivors of his abuse.
Right.
Now, it appears that the SAA management were notified that he was present, that he'd been allowed to register, and that this Title IX report into his behaviour was in the public domain, as was his banning from the University of Anchorage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
However, nothing appears to have been done until a science journalist called Michael Bolter, uh, in the words that have been used, intercepted Yesner and escorted him from the premises.
Okay.
Now, that led to what can only be described really as a confrontation with the SAA management. Now, again, sources differ on what precisely happened and why precisely actions were taken, but essentially, the chief executive of the SAA, Una Schmidt, um, emailed Bolter to say that his registration had been withdrawn from the conference,
Right.
and he was asked to leave, in spite of the fact that he was booked to speak on a panel about Me Too issues as they're related to archaeology and science, because that's one of his specialities as a journalist.
So, I mean, that what wow. I mean, wow. I mean, so I've seen there's an excerpt. We'll be sharing links to all this stuff below.
Indeed, people need to read this
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah. And also there's some descriptions of actually what he did that we're not going to go into here. It's just a bit, it's just too grim really to languish on. But an excerpt from the email that Bolter received from Schmidt here says that as much as I recognise that you are trying to share your concerns, your calls are not appropriate. Given the nature of this outreach, SAA must withdraw your 2019 conference registration per our standard of conduct policy. That's fascinating, just fascinating. And as you say, given the nature of the panel that he was meant to be on the one hand, the conference is highlighting the issue. On the other hand, they're completely being tone deaf in terms of who warrants and who requires in terms of structure, structural protection in that sense. So I mean, sometimes people talk about this as creating a safe space, and I for one sometimes have trouble with that terminology, in so much as I think it can sometimes be used to squash, for example, freedom of speech and this kind of thing, or being confronted with topics and issues that one might be uncomfortable with in a realm where open debate should be encouraged, arguably. But the fact of the matter is, this is an absolutely proper and right place to be a safe space. You should be able to attend this conference, and especially attend a panel like that, or be at this conference for such a panel, without being confronted by someone who has been legally found to be a danger to students and archaeologists who are attending. It's just bizarre, and it's also really weird from a so obviously you and I have a particular interest in terms of public communications and how archaeologists deal with the public, but also deal with each other publicly. And some of the tweets that SAA were putting out were again also almost passive aggressive in their tone. One tweet here at 3:30 p.m. on April the 13th said the SAA has been in the forefront in creating an anti-harassment policy that is designed to make the meeting a safe space for all attendees, which includes SAA staff, implying there that Bolter had caused some risk to the staff in ejecting this person. It's just weird. I mean, you described it to me as a cluster something, and so on that level, I suppose you can shake your head and find it almost hilariously bad in terms of its tone deafness, but also in a very real way, this highlights why these you can't just be paying lip service to these matters. You have to follow through with what your stated standards are, surely.
I think, aside from the situation that Yesner was found to have created, the way it was handled by SAA, they managed to turn a disaster into a catastrophe. Because what appears to have happened is that they immediately consulted their lawyers, and it would appear that the lawyers said, don't say anything about anyone. So at at a point in the meeting, and this is on the first day proper of the conference, um, the social media is lighting up with all these very articulate academics saying, what is going on? Give us some news. This is appalling. Why has Balta been banned? Why, why was Yesner allowed in? And so on and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And SAA's management said nothing.
No.
They offered to meet, Una Schmid, the chief executive, offered to meet with Balta to discuss the issue 4 days after the conference ended. That was the first slot she had in her calendar, she said. No. Now, to be honest, I think if I was the chief executive of an organisation and something like that had happened, I'd want to talk to the principal straight away and find out what the hell was going on.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, yeah, I would clear my afternoon.
Exactly. Exactly. It would have been lovely to go and to go to the coffee to coffee and cake, but and then, although again they have a social media committee and communication that looks at communications and so on, they managed to, almost every tweet that they did put out, they managed to annoy people even more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it either said nothing, or as you say, it was seen as passive aggressive, or, for example, just basic mistakes. And you go on the conference website, and there were pages about about safety and accountability and what to do if you were concerned about anything. They had, as I say, they had staff with "Talk to Me" badges on if people had problems and so on. But when it came down to it, they just could not deliver. And so, for example, on the social media output, they consistently referred to the survivors of Yesner's abuse and bullying and sexual harassment as victims. Now, anybody who works in this area knows that you do not refer to people in that situation as victims, because that actually is adding to the distress.
Well, it adds to the stress, but also it's in the same way that it's often, words like predator are often used, and often for the predatory, that's something that bolsters their ego, as opposed to them being criminal, in that sense. And so I should say I'm laughing. That's a slightly nervous laugh. That's not me. I'm not laughing at the issue. So I just want to be clear. But something that really sort of soured it for me was a couple of days later, when there was an open letter issued by the SAA to the membership. And I'll just read the whole thing, because it's not that long, but again, it's just a bit tone deaf. April 18th, 2019. Dear members, as the president of the board of the Society for American Archaeology, I want to apologise for the events that happened last week in Albuquerque under my watch. I failed to take the kind of action we should have taken to address the distress of the attendees at our meeting. I allowed myself to be convinced that our harassment policy was more important than the feelings of our members. Now, that's okay, I guess. It's a bit late, but that's okay. The board of directors and I are working to find a way forward. We will create a body to examine the shortcomings in our sexual harassment policy of 2015 and the anti-harassment policy of 2018. That body will create a report and make recommendations to the board of directors so that we can do our best to ensure that this does not happen again, in italics. This body will operate at arm's length from the board, so there will be no perceived undue influence. This body will be member-led. The situation has highlighted the weakness of our communication with our membership. I pledge to strengthen our internal and external communication mechanisms by increasing the communication between board liaisons and respective task forces and committees. I have also heard from the former task force and committee members of their frustration with the existing structure, where task force recommendations to the board were ignored or unacknowledged. I pledge to put a stop to this and to listen better to our members' concerns. The elected members of the board really do care about you. You are our friends and colleagues, our students and mentors. You are the shared histories of the discipline and the future stories yet to be written. That's nice, but it's a bit, egging the pudding there. I ask that you give me a chance to make the changes we need to make. It will be painful and difficult. There will be some missteps, but we must keep working at it. We are at a point where we can destroy what has been 84 years in the making because we are angry and frustrated, or we can work together to make it better. I do, capital letters, know how you feel. I have felt this way before in the past, and I have tried to work to get to a point where I can influence change. I ask that you work with me to help me change what you believe needs changing. Oh, okay. Without you, the SAA cannot exist. Thank you for listening and being part of this society. Sincerely, Joe E. Watkins, President of the Board of Directors, the Society for American Archaeology. And there's also an accompanying video as well.
Indeed.
Now, that I came across this letter in the context of a colleague. This wasn't on the Archaeology Facebook page, but a private Facebook post. A colleague basically saying that just sounds like lots of words, but actually, essentially, they haven't really learned anything. They actually used language which was filled with swear words. So I'm trying to think of a way to summarise what they said, but essentially, it just felt to them sounded like it was too little, too late.
Let me give you an example of what they're trying to deal with here. I think, first of all, they're obviously completely out of their depth with this. They did not see this one coming.
No.
And when it did hit them full in the face, they just did not know how to deal with it. And it sounds like they took advice which might have been sound in legal terms, but was certainly not sound in any other way. But when it comes just to the communication, one of the first things that happened when the row broke was that a bioarchaeologist, a well-known bioarchaeologist and author called Dr. Christina Kilgrove, resigned from her post as chair of their media relations committee. And in her resignation letter, which she published, she wrote, "Given the SAA's lack of interest over the past 2 years in using the expertise that my committee and I bring to the practices of social media and media relations, I was unsurprised that SAA was caught off guard by the registration of Dr. David Yesner, whose case had been widely circulated by archaeologists both on Facebook and Twitter for more than a month now. Yesner was a known threat with sanctions in place at his former employer, the University of Anchorage, Alaska." And then she concluded by saying that I truly hope that SAA will learn from its memberships and public's vociferous reaction to the situation, but I'm no longer interested in giving my time and effort to an organisation that has such clear contempt for the most important cultural movement of this generation. That's the Me Too movement. Other people were even more outspoken. Somebody else on social media wrote, "Fix your policy, communicate with local associations and universities, and do effing better."
Yeah. Well, and also, I'm sure you have as well, but I've seen many people flat out just saying that they're cancelling their membership.
There has been a lot of comments to that effect, and in fact, last week at the CIFA meeting, SAA's handling of this issue was being held up at their own discussions of issues of Me Too and safety and so on as a how not to.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the really sad thing about it is, I was after when I was writing my piece about it, I emailed somebody else who commented on Twitter just to ask permission to use her tweets. It's Professor Lynn Goldstein, who was from the University of Michigan Archaeology program, and because she wrote, I found something I found really affecting about another impact of this on respected and respectful archaeologists who go to something like that because it's an endorsement of their work and sometimes their careers. And what Professor Goldstein wrote was, "Going to be selfish for a moment, just to get it off my mind, was delighted to be awarded an SAA Lifetime Achievement Award, but the rest of this crap really ruined my ability to celebrate. I always try to be supportive, but all of this is overwhelming. Fix the problem, SAA." So it wasn't just the survivors of Yesner's abuse who were affected by this, and other women and men who may have been victims also of bullying and abuse in the archaeological workplace, who might have been attending that conference. But it's other, It was damaging everybody.
It soured the whole thing. Well,
You know what? I just one point to finish with, Mark.
Mhm.
You know what? Really, and I, d- I did pose the question: is this possibly archaeology's Harvey Weinstein moment, when this issue starts to become public and gathers a momentum of its own?
Mhm.
Now, I think we're too close to that yet. It depends on other people coming forward. Being brave enough to come forward and discuss openly what's happened in their lives and experience. But certainly, I've been picking up from particularly social media, but also in other contacts, that actually there are stories like this from the UK. Colleagues have reported being in similar situations at conferences in Britain and Europe. This one isn't going to go away.
No, no, no.
Sadly.
And in that sense, nor should it. These sort of things need to be tackled head on.
Exactly. We have to admit our faults,
Yeah.
and deal with them.
I don't feel I want to comment any further on this, in so much as I haven't experienced this sort of harassment, but also I beyond the handling of it, I don't feel as though I have the expertise really in terms of legality, etc., so on and so forth. However, we will link below to there's a document from bajr.org. Which is called Respect Acting Against Harassment in Archaeology, Guide number 44. It's from 2018, written by Kate Hawkins and Kat Rees. Also, we'll link to that below. And also, as well, the ACAS Working for Everyone. It's a disputes handling service. It is UK based, but there'll be stuff in here as well for people who are concerned about these issues when it comes to organisations that they may be attached to. In so much as I wouldn't know the first place to start looking when it comes to considering these sorts of matters when dealing with, for example, writing policy or constructing a best practice format and structure for my colleagues. So these are some useful reference points, with the Badger one being particularly pertinent to archaeology below. Okay.
Indeed. And I think we should also, as I mentioned, the ACAS website as well, which has some very useful information, again from a British point of view, and that there are support groups available for people who feel that they have been in these kind of situations and need to discuss them with others.
Yeah.
Don't keep it inside.
No, exactly.